Alrighty guys, so I am going to try to go through and break this up into sections. So the first thing we're going to talk about is multiplying fractions and whole numbers. So you could actually multiply fractions and whole numbers two different ways. You could have the whole number times the fraction or the fraction times the whole number. The way that you would think about these are actually two different ways. Yes, they result in the same answer, but the way that you think about them is a little bit different in a real world situation. So if we're looking to just solve this, realistically, the answer to both of these is 12/5. Now, a common mistake that I see the kids making is they get 12/30 as the answer because they're also multiplying the denominator by 6 as well. And the way that I get them to think about this so that they don't make that mistake, I know what a lot of parents will try to do is show them that, oh, you can just take the 6 and put it over a 1 and turn it into a fraction and then do fraction by fraction multiplication. And while you can do that, another common mistake that I have kids do is whenever they're taught that, they accidentally do this. And that is no longer equivalent to 6. That is now equal to 1, and it makes it a completely different problem. That is why I try to not teach them to just put it over 1, because a lot of them confuse it with putting it over itself. So like 6/6. So the way that I teach them to think about this is we're making 6 copies of 2/5. So we relate it to repeated addition. And so while you could solve it this way, we also talk about it not being efficient anymore. So I could repeatedly add 2/5 together 6 times, or I could rename this and say, okay, I'm just making 6 copies of 2/5. And when I do that, my fifths are not changing because when I add fractions, the denominators stay the same. But I want 6 copies of those 2/5, and that would give us 12/5. And so the final answer here, if I simplified this, I could pull out one whole, which is 5/5, another whole, which is another 5/5. So I've used 10/5, and I would have 2/5 left over, making me pull out 2 full wholes and then 2/5 of another whole. This is whenever you have a whole number times a fraction. Now, the way that you think about this problem is actually a little bit different. You would think of this as finding part of 6 wholes, so I want 2/5 of 6 wholes. What this should tell kids when they see a problem like this is that they know that their answer should be less than 6. The reason they know that that answer is less than 6 is because we're only finding part of it. If I was finding 5/5 of 6 wholes, then the answer would be exactly 6. And we already know from solving this, when we found 6 copies of 2/5, that the answer is 2 2/5, which is less than 6. And so what you could teach them is this is multiplication, and you can do multiplication in literally any order. The order doesn't matter. So you could have them rewrite this where you take the fraction and the whole number and they just swap places. So then they can relate this to the repeated addition that we've been doing so that they don't make that mistake of accidentally multiplying the denominator and the whole number and getting 30ths as a unit, because we know that that's not what we need to do. Now, if this is a word problem though, this is where doing this isn't going to be helpful, because in the situation, you're actually going to be trying to find part of the whole. So this is where in a tape, again, word problem, if it's just this regular problem and it says solve it, they can just solve it. But in a real world context, in a word problem, they're going to have to think through the situation. So we say, okay, we're trying to find part of the whole. Well, what is the whole? The whole is 6. So I label the whole of my tape as 6. We want to find 2/5 of the 6 wholes. I'm not going to sit here and show all 6 wholes, but I can break this up into 5 parts and label that I want to find, I want to find 2 of those parts. So realistically, the math you just did on this tape was you took 6 and you divided it into 5 parts. And we have learned that you can rewrite division as a fraction. So I know each of these is 6/5. And while all of them are 6/5, my goal is to only include 2 of these units in our answer, because we want 2 of those fifths, which gives us, if I added those together, 12/5, which we said earlier was 2 2/5. And again, the goal in 5th grade is to understand the concept, understand the idea. So meaning, like, we know something about our answer before we solve it. We're only finding part of the 6 wholes. Here, I can think of it as making copies of this fraction. It's relating it to all the stuff they've already learned. So that is multiplying fractions by whole numbers. So on their extra credit assignment, that would have been problems 3 and 4. What I was looking for was 26, which they then simplified into 3 full wholes, which would be 18/6 with 2 6 left over. And then here it would have been 15/8, which simplified would be 1 whole and 7/8 of another whole. In the next couple of videos, we'll go through the rest.